Part of the mystery organic radio field-enabled flesh interface. Oh dear, my dear listeners, it's happened once more. Things from over there have pulled my mind into focus. An inky blackness marches across the whites of my eyes. How did we get here as I stare at the beating heart of a violin that hangs on the wall? Do I fear the eyes that see me from the cracks in the wall? A unite stage a coup a revolution a bring a genocide a new world a. In the Mgultra experiments, the CIA dosed unwitting subjects with LSD to see how they would react. What has not yet come to light is that Mgultra was an intra-agency project. The CIA created new departments within the CIA, and fed them steady doses of LSD, and other psychoactive to see how the departments would diverge, and mutate away from normal departments. Whole projects and hierarchies were created, with everybody involved being more or less unwittingly under the influence of LSD. This is how the restraint bed portals and flesh interfaces were first created, i.e. from a heavily psychomutated hierarchy. The entire thing had to be eliminated, but the technology it created has been revolutionary. A moment ago, one of your technicians placed a small pellet under the skin of my forearm. Within 10 minutes, the pellet's wax coating will melt and release a cardioplegic into my bloodstream, stopping my heart. You must cut it out. Hearing this, I breathed a sigh of relief. There was something unsettling about her face that made me believe she would tell me something urgent and terrible. But this was typical occupant talk. Like many of them, she believed that she was still inside a feed narrative. You've been disconnected. This isn't a feed. There's no pellet in your arm. Your name is Karen Castillo. Do you remember? Scan my right arm with the ER, she said in a bare, cracking whisper. You'll find it. Karen, do you know why you're in this bed? I've been disconnected. This was a strangely lucid answer. It didn't make sense. If she had been force disconnected, how did she know that? Hey, we got 2 more calls to get to, one of the techs reminded me. Yeah, okay, pull her, I said, stepping back. A pair of techs hoisted her tiny, doll-like body from the hygiene bed onto our gurney and covered her with a sheet. Please, she croaked. Just scan my arm. What did she say? Asked Ricardo, the lead tech, as we rolled her out into the bed rack apartment's narrow, almost lightless hallway. It's a feed dream, I explained. These guys were looking at me to be the expert, so I had to act like I knew exactly what was going on. It was best to go ahead and get to a medical center and address her physical needs before we started countering her delusions. Until then, all I needed to do was be reassuring. Under no circumstance could I encourage her delusions. We rolled the gurney down the hallway to the elevators. Karen was making little croaking noises. Her voice was almost useless after 24 years of disuse. Her face seemed extremely disturbed. Somebody was standing at the elevators, already waiting for one. It was just Elian, one of our techs. I hadn't noticed him leave before us. I got an elevator coming, he said with a little smile. Even though the apartment building was a 300 cube, it had old-style cable elevators, and they came with the frequency of subway trains. Thanks to Elian's thoughtfulness, one was arriving just now. I gave Karen a friendly smile. Don't worry. Nobody's going to hurt you. You're completely safe. She managed to gasp a couple words, which I barely heard. Elian. He. There. She had known another of our names. How was this possible? It was hard to sort through the implications. Did she have access to our records? Maybe dispatch was wrong about how she got disconnected. The elevator let out a ding and the doors opened. There was barely enough room inside for the gurney, me and the 3 techs. Elian stood on the other side of the gurney from me. I looked him over as the doors closed and elevator began to descend. Was she saying that this guy put a poison pellet in her? It was strange that he would be a part of her narrative. Very strange. I didn't know much about the guy beyond his name, but I had worked with him a few times. He was just one of the rotating techs, young guy, military hair and goatee, skinny but pretty fit. I wondered how he would be in a fight. These younger guys had so much supplementing, it was hard to tell. Elian caught me looking at him and gave me a bit of a surly look. For some reason, this irritated me. So, friend, you trying to get out of here before the rest of us? You got a date or something? I asked, needling him. I was just getting the elevator, he said quietly. He didn't seem to like the banter. Well, whatever. I looked down at Karen and noticed something, a small red spot on the white sheet that covered her arm. Blood. It must have been from where they took her blood. Who took it? Elian? The spot was too low on the arm for that. Odd. I thought of taking a look at it, but one of the most important protocols when dealing with occupants was to not act like you believe their delusions, even for a moment. You must insist on the reality of reality. I realized that Elian was watching me. I casually looked over to the elevator panel to see what floor we were on. 238 man, this fucking thing was slow. What was the deal with that spot? It wouldn't be out of place for me to wonder about some patient bleeding. I lifted the sheet and took a look. There was a small puncture wound a few inches above her wrist. How'd she get that? I asked. One of the techs just muttered about not knowing. Elian didn't even look at the spot. His face was blank, unreadable. I touched her arm and felt a small nodule under the skin about an inch from the wound. Hey. Interesting. I stood there trying to process this, caught between two realities. Was I in an elevator on a routine call with stable client and a few techs who were just ordinary acquaintances? Or was I in an elevator with murderer and a woman on the brink of death? There was really no way to split the difference on this one, no course of action that would work for both cases. Fuck. What was I even asking myself? There was no way. Simply no way. Stuff like that never happens in real life, but it happens in the feeds all the time. It's a 100% typical spy narrative bullshit. How could I let myself get caught up in some feed fantasy so easily? But still a nodule under the skin? There was no good explanation for that. Elian turned to me. We looked at each other for a long, silent moment. I couldn't read the expression on his face. It wasn't chummy goodwill, whatever it was. I felt a twinge in my stomach and my body began flooding with adrenaline. I could feel it radiating out into my limbs. Fuck. My time in the Marines had taught me many things, many of them useless in the normal world, many of them useless outside of a bar or cat house, but one of the more useful ones was that I should trust my adrenal gland. It meant that my paranoid lizard brain understood something that my snotty intellect was too busy to notice. It happened when things were too quiet, when a certain car kept following the convoy, when somebody was acting funny. There in the elevator, I almost reached for the grip of my rifle. I wasn't wearing a rifle, of course, so I just scratched my chest, trying to keep my fingers loose. Elian put his hand to his hip. Just like that I was leaping across the gurney. I grabbed his wrist with both hands, but it was an awkward angle, with me splayed over the gurney, and I had no control. A silver pistol came out of his pants, still halfway in its holster. Help! Get him! I shouted as I slid off the other side of the gurney towards Elian's feet, holding on to that wrist for dear life. I heard shouting everywhere, but nobody helped me and nobody got him. Now I was on the floor, wrestling with Elian. There was lot of awful, terrified fumbling. 4 hands were grabbing and clawing for the pistol. Somehow my head was jammed between Elian's shoulder and the wall, and I couldn't even see the gun. I could just feel the metal. There was a shot, painfully loud. Elian shouted. Was I hit? Now the gun was wet. I managed to wiggle my fingers around the grip. With one huge twisting jerk, I put the muzzle against Elian's face. No. I pulled the trigger, a shot, and his head kicked back against the wall, the mouth popping open. Everything went still. His hands were still holding mine. The people were moving along the river, as the people do in the gentle days, moving from one fruitful place to another. Maid played the flute, first a river song, then a berry song, then both mixed together, and it was so flowing that the people began to laugh and shout. Resh slapped his chest and called out the names of the fathers and the deeds, and it all flowed so well that we almost didn't see the old woman in the thornflower bushes. She was an old crone, huddled up in the bushes, naked and covered with cuts. All the music fell away at once, and the people gathered around to take a look. She was very old, far into the barren years, maybe even into the years of being carried. I did not like the look of her right away. She did not have a face of the fathers and the people, but rather the hungry, untrusting face of one of the wandering strangers that we sometimes met along the river. Even when strangers were friendly, they did not know the names of the fathers or the deeds, except for maybe a few, but they did not say them properly or with respect. Other times, they set upon the people, killing and raping and committing all manner of hideousness. I was always glad to see them go on their way, leaving us alone with the mother river. Some of the older people tried to talk to the crone. She knew some of the names of things, but said them wrong. I went away from the crowd and looked out into the rocky land. I had a feeling that maybe she was not alone, that there were other strangers with her, ready to set upon us. The land seemed to be empty. Some of our cats were with us, crouching and sniffing around, and they seemed unworried. Still, I showed my chest and made signs of war in case anybody was among the rocks, watching us. Rima saw me making the signs and laughed at me, saying that she saw some lizards making signs of surrender. I made a few signs of courtship towards her, but with a snarling face, and she ran off giggling. Somebody called my name. I came back to where the people were gathered. Somebody had given the crone a cloth to cover herself, and some of the women were putting good, lucky mud on her cuts. I didn't like this. Why should we waste anything on a barren old woman? Somebody had called me because I was the son of Arad, one of the great men of the people. The crone had called on all the great people, the leaders of the people. She wanted to show us something. I didn't like this either. Who was this useless crone to call on all the great people? The crone was talking to the great people. The way she said the names was all wrong, but her voice was like a strong music, and her eyes were very large and powerful, and she moved her hands, making all sorts of unknown signs. The people listened to her closely, and I found myself listening with them. She said that she was the daughter of the river. She did not have a mother and father of the flesh, but her mother was the river alone. I scoffed at this. The stories of the deeds tell us that the ancient people came from the river, but this was long ago, and they were not strangers, who came from the rocky lands alongside the lizards. She went on talking, saying that she was living with the painted backs, a friendly group of strangers we had met before, but that they had all been set upon by another group of strangers. The other strangers were powerful and cruel, and they carried all the painted backs off except her. This was how she ended up naked in the thorn bush. The people murmured at this. When had it happened? Just the night before. This was worrying. Maybe the other strangers were still around, waiting to set upon us. The crone asked the people to take her with us. This started more murmuring. She was a stranger, not a person, and she was an old crone. She could never become a person by birthing one of the people, nor could she work hard for the people. She was useless. Maid, the flute player, spoke up and said that we should show her the kindness of the people, the same kindness that Mother River shows to us. Are we not useless to the river who was here before us, and would be here forever? I liked Maid, who was close kin, but he liked talking and impressing people too much. Now we were in the gentle days and things were easy, but what would happen in the dry days when everything needed to be saved? And who would carry the crone when she could no longer walk? The fathers did not perform the deeds so that we could carry old crones around. But I did not say this because I am not good at talking, and my words would seem weak compared to maids, which glittered and flowed. The woman began talking in her strange way again, saying that we should take her with us because the mother river would bless us with many things, as she was the mother's daughter. Now some of the people began to scoff like I did, saying that this was not according to the deeds. The crone agreed with this, calling these people wise, and saying that some of the deeds were secret. This started more talk which started to lead toward argument, when the old crone suddenly strode right into the river and held her hands up and called for everybody to watch. The people became silent. The woman reached into the river, searching for something. After a moment, she pulled her hands out and showed us, dripping and shining in the sun, 3 very large river clams. Waving the clams around for us to see, the old crone claimed that this was proof that she was the blessed daughter of Mother River. Many of the people snickered and muttered the names of the fathers. Everyone knew that these were the gentle days, and it was easy enough to reach into the river and pull out clams. The woman was just a filthy old trickster. We should leave her and move on. Look, the woman cried, and she handed the clams to the great men. Look inside. Our Uncle Kel slipped his thick yellow thumbnail into a clam's mouth and pulled it open. The people pressed around him to get a look. It was a nice clam with healthy meat, but clinging to the shell was a large, perfect pearl. The women all let out little sighs, and the men murmured. Other great men pulled open the other 2 clams, and they both held even larger pearls, all 3 perfectly round. At this, people gasped and shouted, and everybody began talking at once. A man might go a whole lifetime only seeing 1 perfect pearl pulled from the river. 3 was a thing that had never happened before. 3 was a thing which would live among the deeds. Take her with us, one of the women cried, and soon most of the people were saying this. I found myself saying it as well. The woman was surely part of a powerful flow, and it was best not to swim against her. But even as the great men agreed that this woman would become a part of the people, and we all cheered and shouted out the names of the fathers and the deeds, I found myself looking at her strange, hungry face and wondering if she had not somehow slipped those pearls into the clams herself. You cannot quite understand the power of addiction until you have seen it firsthand. Until you have seen it eat like an acid through everything you are. It is astounding to watch. Its slow and total corrosion of your entire life is mesmerizing. As you watch it, you keep thinking, at some point, the corrosion will stop. There is no way it will be able to eat through this next thing. This next thing is too important to me. But then it does. It eats through everything. And you realize you are dealing with a vast and inhuman power. The most frightening thing is that consequences do not work against a well-developed addiction. There are ultimately no consequences, none, which can separate you from your drug. As your addiction progresses and your self-control slips away, there is nothing you won't risk to continue doing your drug. Nothing is important enough. Nothing is sacred enough. Money, career, marriage, home, family, goals, art, religion, dignity, safety, health, sanity, parents, children, life itself. All of it will go into play. All of it will be put on the table. If you play the game shrewdly, you might get to keep some of it. You will not get to keep all of it. You will pay. You will pay in ways that you cannot imagine. You will look at the people who have lost more than you, and you will pretend you are different than them. You will pretend that you can walk away from the table. But the time will come to walk away, and you won't. You will keep playing. You will be made a liar. If you play long enough, all your pious little promises will be shown to be lies. I have a good job. I would never risk my job. I love my wife. I would never risk my marriage. I love my children more than anything. I would never risk my children's safety. Ever. I don't want to die. Whatever specific promises you make will be the ones that you will break, because those are the ones you have made to try to control yourself. But you won't be able to control yourself. Your self-control will be pried from your grasp like a toy being taken away from a child. And when break these promises, you will not be some mindless junkie who doesn't care anymore. You will be in many ways the same person you are now, and you will know how awful and horrifying your actions are, and you will do them anyway. You will not be able to believe what is happening to you. You will tell yourself that you are unlucky or cursed. You will watch in horror. But what you are watching is yourself. The horror is what you are doing. I realize that this all sounds rather silly and dramatic. From the perspective of somebody dabbling with drugs, this all sounds laughably overwrought. But if you ever go where I have been, if you ever see what I have seen, this will still sound laughable, not because it is overwrought, but because it is insufficient, because it doesn't even begin to describe it. To hunt prey, to taste righteous lifeblood, you must simply become an ordinary part of the world. Look around. What is happening right now? Nothing at all. Yet the leaves rustle, the grass sways, the birds call, the gnats dance. All of this is just a part of the world. If you become a part of the world, you become nothing at all. You become invisible. If you are not part of the world becomes 10,000 things. This is misfortune. It is easy enough to become invisible if you stay still, if you hide. But staying still and hiding aren't enough to catch prey. You must seek and strive. How do you seek and strive while remaining an ordinary part of the world? How do you exert your will without disrupting the world? How do you move along with the will of the world? This is the mystery of hunting. This is the mystery of subtlety. This is the greatest of all mysteries. Consider the mouse. It is moving through the leaves, looking for food. You must not disturb it. Do as little as possible. Wait. Watch and listen. If it moves away, move with it. Follow it. If it moves closer, stay still. Practice non-interference. Let it come. It should be thinking happy thoughts of food and comfort when you strike. When you snare it in your claws, do not eat it right at once. Let it struggle and give up its lifeblood. Practice non-action. You need not kill it. Let it die. To be subtle is to move with the will of the world. Do not move against the will of the world. This brings misfortune. Touch lightly the course of things without disturbing it. Touch it gently at points of inflection, and it will move as you wish. This brings great fortune. This is the ancient art of subtlety, taught to us by our form. I must follow it if I am to find any answers to the mystery of the oily ones, the mystery which has obsessed me since the death of my kitten. I must know why they both feed us and kill us, why they are kind and motherly but also unnatural and abominable. I have decided that I will go into one of their hiding places. After much investigation, I have chosen a place. It is a very large and horrible hiding place, a sort of mountain of box-like shapes colored by unnatural light. It emits a powerful and unholy odor of decadence. What is more, there is something which makes it different from all other oily places I have ever seen. It seems that some of our kind live within this place. I have seen them from a distance, going in and out of it, using small portals. They are different than those of our kind that I have known. It seems that some of the oily ones' corruption has mutated them. They are very fat and slow. Their faces are stupid and sullen. They fear nothing. They have lost subtlety. I am not even sure they are truly of our kind. I will go inside. I must be subtle. To be subtle, I must become a part of the world. I may have to become a part of the abomination itself. I may find death, bloody death as my kitten did. But I will hunt to the heart of this mystery. And I will sleep again. Now I was standing in an elevator, my hands covered with blood, a dead tech lying on the floor and a helpless occupant lying on the gurney. The other two techs had hit the emergency button and hastily gotten off at the next floor. Understandable. I had tried to explain to them about the poison pellet in Karen's arm, but they didn't stick around to consider the merits of my argument. I set the gun down on the floor. This wasn't good. A couple of Elian's fingers had gotten blown off, and there was blood all over me, not to mention the bullet in his head. Shit, what now? I had shot people before. I had killed them before. But this was different. They had given me mandatory therapy after the war. They might give me mandatory something else after this. Karen was wheezing, her blind eyes wiggling in her head. The pellet. I should take care of that before anything else. I wiped my hands off on my nice white coat and rifled through one of the tech bags to find the C-knife and some local. This shouldn't be too hard. It was a lot like removing a rotted jack. I'm going to cut out the pellet. You ready? I asked. Karen's head jiggled in a way that could be construed as nodding. Good enough. I hastily gave her the local and cut a pretty sizable chunk out of her arm, and the whole elevator filled with a burning smell that was a welcome change from Karen's existing smell. After sealing the wound, I examined the shriveled chunk of meat. There was indeed a white pellet lodged in it like a little pearl. I put it in a specimen jar. I might need it to avoid death row. Okay, you're safe now, I said, not really knowing if this was true. Her monitor still looked okay. What now? I wanted to just get the fuck out of there. But there was certainly a camera in the elevator plus 2 witnesses who knew me. What would the camera show? Me suddenly leaping across the elevator and shooting a guy in the head. That wasn't good. But how would I even begin to go on the run? I didn't know the first thing about identity shifting. And hadn't I done the right thing? I had saved her life. I had the pellet to prove it. I was a hero. Right? I felt like reporting this to my CO. This didn't make any sense. But I should report it to somebody. I called the emergency service on my set and told it what had happened. It told me that officers would be sent over immediately. I tried to explain about the pellet, but this seemed to confuse it. It asked me if the pellet was armed. After a few minutes of confusing crosstalk, I just hung up. As I waited and the minutes passed, the elevator felt very small and smelly and stifling. The blood around Elian covered the floor, surrounding my shoes. I imagined the cops coming up on another elevator as slow as this one. Karen's head was still wobbling in its weird way, the gurney making little creaking sounds, little gasps coming out of her throat. Everything's fine. You're in the real world now, I found myself saying, half-heartedly going through my standard patter. Absurd. Nothing was fine. Then the thought finally occurred to me. Why had Elian tried to kill this girl? Who wanted her dead? This was an important question. Whoever it was wouldn't be happy with me. Looking at her lying there, gasping, I knew it wouldn't be much use to ask her verbally. But she still had good jacks. It was against protocol to plug into a feedhead's jacks. We were supposed to be getting them used to face-to-face conversation. But protocol did say you could plug in during an emergency. This definitely qualified. I told my set to find her jack's wireless presence. A flood of messages hit the set, a backlog from the last couple minutes. Don't call police / bad idea / we have to go /go / police are coming / get out /go go. What? I murmured as I saw the messages. Q controls text / controls police / police will kill you / we must go. Who is Q? The adversary. Shit. This was so similar to a feed narrative. It felt like I had played this one before. What was that one with Zach Okonkwo? Fatal Escape or some shit like that. Terrible story. Why do they want to kill you? I asked. I am one of the bread. The bread? I had heard the name before. I wasn't sure if it was from the news or a narrative. I had a vague idea that it was one of those old art protest collectives, like Anonymous or the Weather Underground. Or was it a feed cult? I asked my set, and it gave me a summary. The Bread is an alleged group of exploit experts who are thought to have been kidnapped at a young age and trained by a shadowy group, variously identified as the Human Front, the Restoration Alliance or the New Organ. They are the subject of a number of conspiracy theories, most of which assert that the Internet's combined governance corporation has been taken over by a sinister force, which the Bread are struggling against within the feed realms and infraspaces. These theories generally involve discussions of mind control, feed conditioning, information war, and the possibility of a fascistic singularity. Occult singularians regard the Bread as the leaders of the new 12 tribes of Israel. Is this real or is this part of a narrative? My set replied, the Bread are featured in many narratives, but are purported to hard exist. There is no widely accepted proof of their existence. Can I through-gate your set? Karen asked. What for? We must go now, now. I heard footsteps in the hallway. The elevator doors were still open, so I peeked my head out. The police were coming down the hall. A lot of police. In tactical gear. I intended to call to them, but that little lizard part of my brain told me to duck back into the elevator. There was a huge metal bang and found myself on the floor with the gun in my hand. A bullet had hit the elevator door frame. Karen's messages unspooled onto my set. I know Q/ruthless/shill spoof calls to emergency/ multiple calls/ say you're an active shooter/ let me through gate/ now/ you want to die. I gave her through gate access on my set. The elevator slammed shut, and my stomach leapt into my throat as we plunged downward. As the elevator plunged down through the building, I tried to understand the implications of it all. It was horrifying. Enraging. All this time, my entire life, without me knowing it, elevators have had a secret faster speed that they don't tell us about. Those bastards. A message from Karen appeared on my set. Must lure them / they will fire in here / get ready. They will what? This was out of hand. God, I felt cranked up. Fantastic. The elevator began to slow, everything becoming heavy. Move the body away from the door. Move the dead body? No, she meant her own body. I pushed the gurney against the side of the elevator. Door will open / take cover. I pressed myself up against the wall. The elevator came to a rattling stop, and the door popped open. The back wall banged and dented as bullets hit it. I cowered against the wall, hoping nothing flew into my arteries. The door clapped shut again, and the floor seemed to fall out from under me as we went down. Man, this little bird had some access. I'd never seen anything like it. Another message from Karen popped into my set, and I read every word in a glance. Silver Hua van / parking number 17A / 20 meters / please help me. The elevator came to another shuddering stop, and the doors opened one of the underground decks, a dim concrete cavern filled with rows of cars. I yanked the gurney out and pushed it like a madman, rattling over the asphalt. The van was where she said it would be. I stood there for a moment, waiting for it to pull out for us, but it just sat there. You must get me wired / I don't want to get fingerprints on its presence. Wired? Did she mean physically? An article appeared on my set called How to Establish a Physical Link to Your 2039 Hua Luxury Chariot. I guess so. I followed the ER guide, looking around every so often to see if anybody was coming. Weird sounds were emerging from the elevators. They seemed to be malfunctioning. I got a wire from my bag and linked Karen's flesh jack to a physical jack by the van's gas cap. A second later the van's rear door unfolded. Get in. I did as she said. Following her orders felt totally natural. It was like I was right back at the tip of the spear. I remembered my time in Turkey and Greece, playing feed games with the platoon all day, then getting dropped right into the kinetic, right into the warm bloody center of the war. Run here. Shoot this. Get down. 19 years old. Traveling the world and blowing shit up while other kids were sitting economics class. God, it was beautiful while it lasted. I shoved the gurney into the van and jumped in beside it. The rear door folded down. Please secure the body. 90 secs left. 90 seconds left until what? I flattened a seat and clumsily transferred her body to it and strapped it in. The van leapt backward and began twisting through space, throwing me against a side window. Sorry, I must go. I got in the other seat and strapped in as the van peeled out. We found the exit ramp and went up. I felt like I was about to break a rib on the armrest as we went on a never-ending left turn, up and up the spiraling ramp. Finally, the daylight of the ground level burst in view. The whole parking lot was swarmed with flashing cop cars, black armored vehicles and cops in hard gear. The van came to a stop in the middle of it all. Fuck, I muttered. The cops were moving in a hurry. It seemed like they hadn't quite formed a proper perimeter around the building, but they were close. We've got go now. They're going to form a. Wait. For what? Air. All around us, the cops were assembling, pulling their vehicles into place, leveling their pistols and rifles. I watched our few possible avenues of exit close up. The van just sat there. Karen's eyes were closed. She looked calm, at peace, just a sick little girl taking a nap. I heard a sound, and my blood ran cold. I hadn't heard that sound in years, but there was no mistaking it. It was a sound that was etched in my brain. In the Marines we used an app called Harpy to call in air-to-ground strikes. It was a wonky over-engineered dod piece of shit, full of weird quirks that they were afraid to fix in the name of ultra-stability. It made a little sound like a sleepy bird chirping when a friendly missile was incoming and it was time to put your stupid head down so that you wouldn't get all that expensive training blown out of your skull. About 2 seconds after that sound, something would light up, and a moment later the sound of the blast would hit and the ground would shake. I heard that sound now coming from my set. My God, what kind of access did she have? Get down. A moment later, police perimeter around us became a wall of fire, and the van was hit with a boom that felt like the earth splitting open. I put my head between my knees and let that old feeling flow through me, the shuddering rush of American air power being liberally applied. When I opened my eyes again, the van's safety windows had bowed inward on Karen's side, almost becoming liquid. Everything around the van was engulfed in fire and smoke. Slowly, the windows began to regain their shape. The van took off with a start, rushing blindly through the chaos. 2 minutes later, we were on the interstate, flying down the taxpayer lane, and I was sitting there, trying to remember how to swallow. It was unreal. Just unreal. She had called in a drone strike in the middle of Atlanta. The level of access required to do that was unimaginable. It meant completely basing the DOD systems. It was beyond any exploit collective. It was beyond governmental. It was planetary. It was God level. I was sitting in van with an infraspace god. Ha hum. I love waking up in the morning to the smell of fresh biscuits. The warm smell fills my dreams, a smell like friends and home and happiness. I wake up to see the sun so bright and lovely in my window. Hello day. How are you? Every day is bright and cheery when you share a house with your best friends. I can hear them downstairs singing and having fun. After a long night of spooky old dreams, it's good to be awake again in the cheery deary sunlight. I unlock my bedroom door and go out into the hall. Some of my friends have left fresh piles of biscuits in the hallway, several different kinds. Wonderful. I breathe in the smell and make chirpy little sounds of glee. Another day. It's always another day. Chester Barrington comes up the stairs, looking very handsome and somber in his tuxedo. Oh, Chester. I sing. How is the gentleman today? Chester nods to me, gruff but debonair. Proceedings are afoot, Madam Alice. Proceedings are afoot, he grumbles and makes his way down the hallway. That Chester. So self-serious. On the stairway, Brett Tillingshire and Mancy Fairworth are in each other's arms, a lover's embrace. Oh, dear. I cry. I'm afraid I've interrupted your tryst. Oh, madam, nonsense. This is no tryst. This is a destined love affair. Brett proclaims in his ringing voice. He looks dashing in his fine, striped coat. Brett, darling, Madam Alice doesn't want to hear all that gooey talk, Mancy says in her sassy southern accent. I'll leave you two be, I say, lifting the hem of my nightgown and hurrying past them. When I get to the bottom of the stairs, I hear Brett murmur, I wish the madam would find a destined love affair of her own. She is a noble woman and deserves somebody to treat her well. You just worry about treating me well, Mancy purrs, nuzzling against his cheek. I scurry off before they catch me listening. In the downstairs parlor, Raymond Dex, Montrose Pardon-Smith and Elise Rapier are having tea together. The smell of biscuits fills the room. A fresh heap of toffee-colored scones covers the coffee table. A wonderful selection of pastries lies in the corner, and several of the chairs contain more treats. Hello dearies. How are we today? Can't complain, Raymond says. Splendid. Sir Pardon-Smith intones. Elise merely lets out a little sigh. Elise, are we not feeling well? I ask, coming over to where she is perched on the arm of the couch. Should we be? Life is but a vague dream which disrupts the sleep of death, she murmurs in her smoky French accent. Oh, Elise. Must you be such an existentialist? Je ne suis pas un existentialist, she mutters, getting up and stalking off. Poor Elise, I say as she leaves the room. She is affected by that peculiar continental ennui, Sir Pardon-Smith observes. I say she needs a dose of sturdy American optimism. Her birthday is coming soon. Perhaps we should throw her a party, I suggest. Ha! A party for Elise? That would go over like a bar mitzvah for Goebbels, Raymond says. Oh, Raymond. I say, tousling his orange hair. Well, we'll have to figure out something for her. I don't like her moping about. She's an inveterate mope. There's no changing her, Raymond says. You may be right, sir, I say, sighing. Well, c'est la vie. Not everybody can be as happy as I am. Some years ago, I was much like Elise. Down the dumps. A real grey cloud. Then I met a lovely young woman who happened to be passing through my neighborhood. Her name was Angelica. It had been a long time since I had enjoyed the delights of society, but Angelica had a very mature, soothing presence, despite her youth. I lived a large house where my family had once resided but was now empty, so I asked her to stay with me. She accepted just like that. Can you imagine it? Two strangers just making a home together? It must have been kismet. She was my precious angel treasure. Absolutely heaven sent. I had been something of an existentialist myself, disbelieving in God and thinking his creation a cruel trap for human prey. But then he saw it fit to bring Angelica into my life, and I never doubted him again. I found her company such a balm that I decided to open my home to whoever needed a place to stay. Singletons, couples, whole families have stayed with me. Many children have been born in this house. Though dear sweet Angelica has long since passed away, her friendship is still a daily gift to me. For on the day I met her, I made a choice to simply not feel sadness or worry or fear ever again. And I haven't. Do you think it impossible? It is possible, if you simply surround yourself with loved ones. That's the secret. With all these thoughts in mind, I walk into the kitchen to see Reginald Strongton, Linda Mercy Chowder, and Marshall Futz clamoring for their breakfast. Madam, I'm famished. Reginald cries. Oh, dear madam. We starve. We want. We waste away. Linda says in a tremulous voice. Oh, Mercy. I left you with a kingly feast last night. Have you eaten it all? I ask. It was not us. We had not a bite. It was that Chester Barrington, the scoundrel. Reginald cries. He is voracious and utterly selfish. I found him down here, helping himself to your generosity, and when I tried to serve myself the smallest morsel, he attacked me. Attacked me, madam. My nose still smarts. Oh, that Chester does have an appetite. But I find it hard to believe such a gentleman would attack you. I am on the verge of swooning, Marshall croaks. All right, dears, let's have ourselves a proper breakfast, I say. I get a bag of cuisine from the cabinet and pour it into china bowls for Reginald, Linda, and Marshall and myself. I clear off the love biscuits that somebody left on the kitchen table, and we all sit down to eat. My little friends immediately proceed with chowing down, and I am about to follow suit, but I notice something that brings me a wonderful thrill. There is a stranger standing in the doorway to the kitchen. I have never seen her before. She appears to have snuck into the house alone. She stands there, tense and alert, her yellow eyes taking in the scene. I am breathless. She is beautiful, extraordinary, and exquisite. She reminds me of my sweet Angelica. Oh, lovely day. I am about to have a new friend. We rode in silence for a while, the Hua luxury chariot flying along the curves of the interstate as all the other cars obediently changed lanes to let us through. I had seen people pull access stunts before, like changing the music in a club or turning off the lights in a restaurant, but what she had done was outright sorcery. She had taken control of the elevator, the car, the drone, and the other cars on the highway, all within seconds. She must have had control of all the security cameras to plan our escape. Every one of these was a hardened system. The drone was a DOD system, the hardest of systems. But she had based it like child's play. Sitting there in the car, I felt like I was coming down off a high. It wasn't a good feeling. I was sitting in a van with a mass murderer of unspeakable power. And I had helped her, given her the access she needed to pull her stunts. She had saved my life, I think, and I had saved hers. But she had also just killed dozens of cops, maybe over 100. Men with families. Fuck, my life was over. I had helped her. That was a death sentence right there. We would become the most wanted people in the country. How did I get caught up in this? I looked over at her tiny, skeletal body. So frail and weak. I could pick her up and chuck her out the back of the van and end this whole escapade. But then what? Face the death penalty? She had to be my best chance at getting away. But who the fuck was she? She was a killer, which was for sure. Utterly ruthless. A message from her appeared on my set. Sorry about all that. Had to hurry like the rabbit with the watch. Sorry? That was rich. I asked her where we were going. Upstate New York. What's there? Our objective. What's our objective? A way to defeat Q. Hard to explain. I wondered if she was insane. She was responsive and lucid, but she was also capable of murder. She would probably get rid of me as soon as she could. So you want me to come with you? I'd like it. I may need physical help. You killed like 100 cops back there. The whole world is going to be looking for us. No, they won't. You don't think so? This isn't the feed realm. They take kills pretty seriously in the real world. I do too. But they'll be too busy to look for us. Busy with what? Q. What's Q going to do? You will find out. 4 minutes. Just tell me. You wouldn't believe me. We fell back into silence. My thoughts were racing. I wondered why they didn't just flag our car or shut down the highway. I guess she was busy working her black magic on the police and transportation systems. Who knew what she was capable of? Was she really one of the bred? A grown-up child soldier? It was illegal to hook children into long-term feeds, but I had heard stories about China and the FRN connecting infants, trying to create people who were utterly at one with the internet. According to the tales, the children all died. So they tried older children, but they all turned into drooling skull baskets. For some reason, the brain needs a certain level of maturity before it can withstand a long-term feed without resulting in total madness. Even then, it results in near total madness. I figured Karen was another child abuse case. But she wasn't just some feed casualty. Her mind worked. Worked well. Whoever had made her had done the forbidden, and they had done it successfully. But why did I have to get involved in all this? I had just gotten my specialist license. After getting out of the Marines and just drifting around for years, I was finally hitting my stride. Now it was all fucked up. Don't look back. I looked over to the girl lying next to me. Was it possible that she had hacked so far into infraspace that she could read minds? There was a passing flash of light, like sunlight glancing off some car, then everything around us started to get brighter and brighter, like the sun had just come out from behind a cloud. But there weren't any clouds in the sky. The light was coming from behind us, bouncing off the other cars, creating a painful glare. I almost turned around, but then I realized what Karen had said. I closed my eyes against the brightness, and the insides of my eyelids glowed red like I was lying on the beach. After a few seconds, the light dimmed and seemed to return to normal. I opened my eyes, blinked a few times and turned around. A few miles behind us, the entire city of Atlanta had disappeared behind a megalithic wall of dark roiling smoke. I felt my mouth falling open. I leaned down to look up at the sky behind us. The giant wall of smoke was just the base of a monstrous black tree of ash that rose miles into the sky, growing larger and larger, looming over the world. Then we were hit by a blast that rattled me right down to the roots of my teeth. I shut my eyes again. The blast turned into long horrifying roar. The van wobbled and shuddered as awful groaning sounds passed through the metal. Eventually, the van's steering systems righted us, and slowly the roar passed. That must have been the blast wave of a nuclear detonation that had just destroyed Atlanta. I unbuckled my seat and crawled to the back window and pressed my face against the glass. The tree of smoke was still growing over us, becoming ever more massive. I just stared in silence. Slowly it changed from one awful form to another until it became a vague gray pillar in the far distance. I'm not sure how long I spent watching it. I know that by the time I looked away, I was crying. I approached the oily one's hiding place with subtlety. Alert. Not disturbing. Letting everything flow through me. I did not search for anything, but allowed all to reveal itself. The smells were disturbing. Awful. I could smell our kind, the mingling sense of multitudes. They seemed to have marked everything without any regard for each other. In front of the portal sat two of our kind. They were monstrously round and swollen, their form distorted. Dull eyes followed me without curiosity as I approached. Even as I came within the dangerous range, they showed no interest. Was it a trap to bring me in close? They did not attack. I passed them and came to the portal. Slowly, I pushed my head through the folding threshold. The inside was utterly bizarre, made of mostly box-like shapes in arrangements I could hardly comprehend. There was no grass, no trees, nothing belonging to the form of the world. Instead there were straight, flat shapes folded around to cover everything, above and below, all sides. In the distance, some our kind were walking around within this odd space, as slow and swollen as the ones outside. The smell was worse than outside, even more confusing. I saw and smelled uncovered droppings everywhere. To not cover droppings was unsubtle. It was a moral outrage. Still, I pushed through the portal and entered the space. The ground was hard and slippery and smelled of legions. Everything was silent, a deeper silence than I had ever known. I knew now that I was cut off from the world for the first time in my life. I was alone. I moved forward. I wanted to shut out the smells and sounds, but I let them pass through me. I was terrified, but I let the terror pass through me. I wondered if I was being unsubtle, if I was disturbing the world, if I was inviting deadly misfortune. But I felt no insight on this matter. The answer would make itself known soon enough. As I moved deeper into the space, I came upon a giant oily one. I call her Angelica because she is Angelica. There's no doubt about it. Oh, she looks different this time, but I think Angelica will look different every time she comes to me. She is also much shyer this time. Such a shy little thing. But the way she moves, that pure, lovely way, there's no mistaking it. It's Angelica again. How wonderful! How lovely! Would you think I'm a silly old biddy if I started crying? If I got on my knees right then and there and started thanking God? How He is great! How He has seen fit to bless me! I have been investigating this space, and I have found much confusion and monstrosity but no answers. There is a single oily one which stays here, as well as many of our kind. All of them, the oily one and our kind, are monstrously swollen and distorted. The oily one in particular reeks of corruption and disease and death. She cries to me like a lost whelp, but I keep my distance from her. I avoid the others of my kind as well. This space has many spaces within itself. Each of these spaces holds 1,000 mysteries. It is everything I can do to not be overwhelmed, to let the mystery flow through me. Darkness has come and left, and I am terribly hungry. The oily one comes to me with food, wonderful food, but I am afraid to take it. I wonder, what exactly am I looking for? I am looking for some answer to the mystery of the oily ones, but what form will this take? I cannot know. All around me are forms I do not recognize. I must not look for anything. I will simply become a part of this place and let the answer show itself to me. Angelic has been here for over a day, but she hasn't spoken to me yet. I think I understand why. The last time she came to me, I was the shy one. I was the one who was afraid of everything, afraid of the world, in despair because of the first time she left. Now I have been restored, and she is the shy one. It is my turn to help her, to give back. I've tried to give her some of our cuisine, but she hides. I don't think she's eaten anything since she found her way in here. Poor thing. Hunger forced me to come close to the oily one. She set down some food and I took it, keeping an eye on her. She has an awful, fleshy face and giant, pale eyes. She often sings like a bird. Abomination. It was the first time eating the oily one's food since my kitten died. Would this food kill me? Only time will tell. My form commanded me to eat, so I ate. The food was absolutely wonderful, as the oily one's food always is. I am trying to follow the art of subtlety, but there can be no subtlety in this unholy den of madness. I believe I have investigated almost every place within this giant place. There are many portals in here which lead to various small places. They open and shut in different configurations. But I have watched them carefully and gone into almost every small place, and found no answers. But there is one place I have not yet gone. It is perhaps the only place yet unseen by me. It is the place where the oily one goes when darkness comes. I think she sleeps there. I heard her making strange singing sounds from within, frightening sounds. She keeps the portal closed at all times. It only opens for a moment when she goes in and out. I have tried to get a look inside, but have not been successful. I believe there must be some answer within this space. Everything has a form, every form is a story, and every story makes sense. There must be some reason for the oily ones, for their random kindness, for their random cruelty. There must be an answer, and that answer must reside within the hidden space, for it does not reside anywhere else. I will wait. I will go inside. Sweet Angelica is starting to warm to me. We eat together. She's still very skittish, but she shows up promptly at dinner time and eats like a little lady. She doesn't chat with me, but I think she will start to soon. I ask Linda Mercy Chowder to be Angelica's special little friend and show her around the house. Of course, Linda responds with, "Oh, madam, I'm too busy with my modeling career. Can't somebody else do it?" Meanwhile, the little strumpet flirts all day with Chester Barrington, but that's another story. The oily one came to me with food, and I found myself crying out to her, as if I was a little kitten again, as if she was my mother. What has happened to me? How could I regard this horrid creature as my mother? I knew that I would have to become a part of this abomination to unravel its mysteries, but this is too much. I want to leave, to go back to the world, to go back to the fresh air and light. I must gain access to the hidden space soon, or I will go mad. I am losing myself. Little Angelica finally talked to me. Now she talks all the time. "Mother, mother. I'm back," she says. "Oh, I've missed you so much. But I knew you would find me again. You will find me every time." Oh, it's joyful. She's still shy and doesn't let me hug her, but to hear her voice again is such a blessing. I notice her following me to my bedroom every night, so tonight I let her in. None of the other ladies or gentlemen are allowed in there, but this is Angelica, so she can sleep with me. She stays in the corner of the room until I fall asleep, even though I sprinkle cuisine all over the bed. I hope that soon we can sleep together like we used to. I finally gained access to the inner space, the space which was to contain all the answers to the mystery which has tormented me for so long. I suppose I have not properly practiced the art of subtlety. I have pushed my way into a forbidden space, snooping and seeking and striving and upsetting things. I suppose it is only fitting that I was greeted with such misfortune. There were no answers in the hidden space. None at all. Just more weird shapes and bad smells. There was nothing that seemed of any significance. I discovered nothing at all. And so the oily ones remain as much as mystery to me as ever. Why are they so monstrous? What is the reason for their kindness? Why do they give us food? Why do we call to them like mothers? I guess I will never know. I have fled that awful space and am gratefully among the trees and grasses again. I will never go back there. Angelica is gone. I haven't seen her for 2 weeks. She stayed with me in my bedroom one night, and I really thought we were getting closer, and then the next day she just disappeared. How could she leave like that? I want to die. I want to die. I can't want to die. I told myself I wouldn't feel this way anymore. I just can't feel this way. No more. I need to call my sister. I need help. What's happened to me? Please God. I've been lying in bed all day, weeping. All around the room there are pictures of the very first Angelica, my darling girl. In the pictures, she's not sick. She's eating ice cream, learning to swim, playing cards. I showed them to the new Angelica, but she couldn't understand. After all, she's just a cat. To hunt prey, you must simply become an ordinary part of the world. Look around, my darling kitten. What is happening right now? Nothing at all. Yet the leaves rustle, the grass sways, the birds call, the gnats dance. All of this is just part of the world. Part of the mystery. Stay paranoid, my friends.